All right, so good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is enjoying Las Vegas, the keynote, and welcome to our session here this morning, which is exactly this, Digital Transformation Excellence using AWS, Agentic AI, taking you from vision to victory. I'm Brad Savenko. I'm in professional services with AWS and a team called Expert Services, where I run the migration and modernization team, and we do some of the largest migrations in the world with some of the largest household names that many of you may be heard of, and perhaps some of you are in the room today. I'm joined by Oscar Rodriguez, who leads the team. We have domain practices across migration and modernization, data, enterprise transformation, and supply chain. And together, we're changing the world with some of these customers that I speak about. Speaking of which, we've invited Ashish Shekhar back this year from Danske Bank, and he's going to speak about some of the progress that they've achieved last year and that they are experiencing this year from a migration and modernization perspective. So let's get started. Here's what's happening today with this new technology. I've been doing this for quite some time at AWS, and with all things being agentic AI, what we are experiencing is migrations occurring on average about 10x faster than traditional approaches. And today we're going to speak about that. And what that means, 10x faster, is an 80 to 90% cost reduction in terms of how we staff and we deliver projects for our customers from a migration and modernization experience. So the challenge and the opportunity, no question, it's significant. As a matter of fact, 70% of the workloads that we are migrating were built and developed and tested and deployed anywhere from 20 to 30 years ago. Think about the complexities that is involved with that. Legacy software, legacy hardware, legacy systems and processes. People, in some cases, who may not even be available or who have documented those previous platforms. That is a challenge that we experience and that you experience every single day. Think about it, 70% of the IT landscape that we operate, that we manage, that we deploy, still on premises with a lot of contingencies and a lot of associated legacy to that. So these days, we actually need AI. We need automation tools to help our customers accelerate their journey to the cloud. So there's no question we are at an inflection point with some of the things that Matt announced this morning at the keynote, and that's some of the things that we are going to speak about today. Things are clearly different. And this is not a future trend. These are things that are happening now. As a matter of fact, we're seeing that 15% of day-to-day technical and business decisions by the year 2028 will be made autonomously with AI, 15% of those. And what that means is machine learning, machine reasoning through complex situations, building a plan for that complex situation, often a migration and modernization, and then executing against that plan and delivering the goods, doing the actual migration and learning from that experience. 15% of those decisions will be made, we believe, by 2028. And that is clearly changing and accelerating everything I spoke about. As a matter of fact, 82% of organizations today are just beginning to leverage AI for the things that you do. Those early adopters, you will be the ones who make a difference to take share, to have competitive advantage, and achieve some of the visions to victory, to rename the title, that you would like to achieve within your career and within your organization. So we're going to speak about a lot of these things today about gaining a significant advantage for how we do this. One of the things I've learned working with in a large cloud provider is customers want both. They do want to move their systems to the cloud, whether it's dev, test, staging, or even production systems to the cloud, but they also want to take advantage of AI. Not only to help them achieve that migration, but once the estate is on AWS, to actually realize and expand their portfolio with AI capabilities on AWS. And we're going to speak about how we do both of that. Introduce purpose-built workloads, AWS Transform, Oscar's going to speak about that. And also some no-code solutions, Quick Suite, and how customers are actually realizing this experience again with some of the things that Ashish is doing within his organization. Now, a lot of people say that this AI thing is, the beginning of the end, you know. I actually believe, to quote Winston Churchill, I think we're at the end of the beginning. There is no question things are going to change with some of the technologies that were introduced over the last 6 months from an AI perspective, but this industry is changing very quickly, and so is the way I approach my customers from a migration and modernization perspective. So let's talk about that. Look, digital transformation is more than just a technology, It involves people, process, technology, and governance. I'm not trying to make this more complex, but how many of you have actually done coding with AI? Just a show of hands, just so I can get an understanding, and accelerating your coding. Okay, it looks like about 40 to 50% of the room is doing that. Do you notice that when you use something like Curo or Qtrans or what have you, an AI tool, that it does optimizations for the code? You start with prototyping, and then you might get these one-line procedure calls that are calling the same procedures that you wrote years ago, and it's called optimization. And that happens when you start to prototype. That happens when you start to build and then turn that into a production process. I know this because I have 16,000 lines of my own code in an application that I'm working on, but imagine if you had hundreds of millions of lines of code. What I'm discovering and what I'm seeing with my customers is developers, you are becoming two types of skill set people necessary. One, writing perfect prompts to build the applications and source code that you want. And two, when you have to go back and realize and debug some of those situations, yeah, you got to look at the source code and do that. So your skills are actually expanding. So that's what I mean about the end of the beginning, because things are changing the way AI is introducing some of this. But if you do this properly, again, this is how, doing it properly, we believe you can experience 10x rapid migration to AWS, 10x more rapid migration to AWS with significant cost savings. So let me be very clear on the expectations that we're going to share with you today. This isn't theoretical. We're going to show you real-world, practical examples using the tools, customer experiences, and most importantly, the end results that you and our customers are experiencing with these tools. There's no question, it is definitely changing. So we want you to understand how agentic AI can reduce your timelines, how it can be introduced as a technology into your daily processes, and how you can use this to leverage a migration and modernization all the way to adopting new systems and new capabilities within your organization. Look, in my role and my team's role in our organizations, I speak to at least one customer per day. At least. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3. This week it'll probably be 15. The trends, you notice, they're kind of similar. What about my staffing? How do I introduce this? What about my legacy? What about the complexity? Where do I start? What do I do? Yeah, these are common questions, common situations, and common experiences that customers are on the threshold of trying to understand. How do I train my people? How do I drive scale? Ashish will talk about a hackathon that he's introduced where thousands of agents are being created within an organization, and a fluency of how to introduce agentic AI is being approached with an example. I know personally within our team, we did quite a few manual processes for running a program to help customers off of legacy systems. I had some of my best migration subject matter experts in the world, my SMEs, working on these projects, doing things like level of effort, the LOE, writing the customer proposal, doing the as-built estate analysis. I don't staff for that anymore. Now what we do is we automate the assessment, we automate the inventory, we come up with a wave plan, we even build out the VPC, the virtual private cloud, on AWS, and we automate that experience. And what we're finding is our staffing models, the way we change our delivery, our proposals, and our implementation timelines to customers, yeah, it is coming in at a 10x experience, faster experience. And Ashish will talk about this a little bit later on in terms of their environment, representative perhaps of many of you. A mainframe migration takes anywhere from 10 to 15 years. 10 to 15 years, hundreds of millions of lines of code, up to 500 in some cases, or doing an enterprise migration of your infrastructure, Windows, SQL Server, Oscar's going to demonstrate some of that, Linux servers, how do you move that? Well, often we're seeing 24 to 36 months to do these migrations. And again, if we can reduce that timeline and eliminate some of those costs and manual experiences, that's what customers are asking for, and that's what we're doing our best to deliver. So we talked about some of this last year in terms of the human process, the human experience to build consistency in how we deliver these migration and modernization projects. And basically, what we would do in the old days is come up with a level of effort. We'd build one pod who was demonstrable and representative of the task ahead to go migrate a specific wave, come up with a wave plan for those servers, and deliver the goods, do the migration. And then we would staff up more pods to drive scale. Okay, that worked, and we got some of the largest migrations in the world completed in a couple of years. Now what's changing is we introduced hyper-automation last year. We spoke about that last year, and now on top of that, we're doing the generative AI automation with many of the tools that Matt spoke about this morning, ranging from purpose-built tools, AWS Transform, that is meant for migration and modernization. It's a tool to do that transformation for you and do those things. Assess your infrastructure, build out the network, build out the wave plan, and you just literally click and move servers. Then there's no-code experiences. Think QuickSuite, where you can take all of that data and ask it difficult questions. How am I doing? How's my budget? How am I tracking? How many more people do I need? And it synthesizes that from a no-code perspective. Or you can write foobar or write Hello World in AI by using something like Kiro to completely re-platform your legacy applications that maybe cannot be migrated. And it's that entire suite of tools that we employ as professional services to move our customers to AWS. So I'm not trying to make this more complex than it is. I know we showed some pretty fantastic demonstrations this morning of showing how easy it is. This is the approach pattern that we take, and it's not for everyone. Many customers, they already have the business analysis of why are we doing this? We're going to save money. We're going to lower costs. We're going to eliminate data centers. Got it. We don't need the business plan for that. What about the overall framework and the governance of roles and responsibilities, and maybe extending some of that work to partner teams or staff teams? What about training people? And remember some of those issues that I talked about when I'm debugging my 16,000 lines of code or 150 million lines of code for a customer. Measure twice and cut once is what I say. Think carefully about how you're going to introduce AI into and unleash it onto your code base, because your developers, your business analysts, your business users often will have to look through two lenses. One, writing the perfect prompts to do the work of the migration and modernization, and two, perhaps you got to step back into the code and indeed do some debugging and write the code, and that's a very common experience. So the point is, if you have a framework to address these challenges and approach it not too aggressively and not too slowly, this is the experience we're seeing. Is a 3x faster delivery speed, cutting our implementation costs by half, and at the same time introducing AI into the organization to enable you. So we can get out of the way from a delivery perspective and enable you to leverage your platform for what it's meant to do. Drive new market share, serve customers better, and lower your costs, and do this on an AWS cloud platform, leveraging the capabilities of AI. So let's look at some of the practical approaches and mechanisms and processes that we use. You'll find those in the middle. Everyone's asking us, help us accelerate our migration by at least 50%. That's a conversation I do have every day. Improve my workplace productivity. What I'm doing right now is mapping products and services to this. I think AWS Transform to do the work on the left-hand side, purpose-built AI capabilities, QuickSuite to do some of these automated business workflows. Literally with no code, you can drag and drop all the documents you wish and ask difficult questions and come up with business and technical decisions. All the way to doing rapid prototyping with something like Kiro on the right-hand side, and rebuild or reimagine and recreate applications in new and more productive ways that are easier to debug because there's a lot less code going on. So this is the process: assess, execute, and scale. And what we like to do with our customers, spend some time on the assessment. How difficult is this going to be? What's the challenge? What's the forecast cost model, both from an implementation and an operational perspective? And then we staff up a few people to do the work. If you do not have the skills, we're here to help you and here to help you achieve and realize some of those goals. So for the remainder of our time together, 45 minutes, we're going to demonstrate some of these and talk about some real world customer examples. So I'll invite my colleague, Oscar Rodriguez, on stage to go through many of these examples with you. Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you, Brad. Everyone, great to see you. Welcome to re:Invent, and also thank you for joining us today. I know there are multiple options available, so we're super happy to have you here. So let me start with introducing myself. My name is Oscar Rodriguez. I'm a director at AWS, and I lead the global practice for expert services. Brad is part of my team. So the role of my team is to help some of the largest customers across the globe. So if you have a big problem, we have the people to support those problems. If you are going through like a digital transformation, we have people that can support you. So feel free to reach out to us anytime, and we are here to support you. So the first part I want to focus on is on so how is AWS helping customers to do the real transformations? There are many tools available, but let me start with the AWS Transform. AWS Transform is the first set of agents that we have developed over the last years to help customers to do large migrations, modernizations. AWS, we have been doing migrations for almost 20 years. This is nothing new. What we have done is we have bring all those different practices, lessons learned as far as how can we do code analysis, how can we do large implementations. And we learn from customers there are 4 main areas where customers they need help. That's the main capabilities of AWS Transform. Number 1, VMware migration. Many of the customers that are reaching out to us, they want to exit from VMware. They want to move to AWS. So we have you covered. The second one is full stack Windows modernization. We have many customers. They are trapped into the fact that they may have a license of Microsoft.NET, SQL Server, and Windows. So we have now we have those capabilities available today for Windows modernization. And the third one is mainframe, which is also, Ashish is going to cover this later on. We have massive number of customers that are looking for how can they modernize their mainframe. So how can they move fast? They don't want to go through a traditional approach. So AWS Transform does provide those capabilities. And the last one, probably you saw from the keynote, now we have the ability to do the custom transformations, which is something that, think about, imagine that you have a COBOL, and there was a program that was written 25 years ago. And now you want to move to Java or .NET. But maybe you have an application on Java, and now you might want to move to .NET. So we're giving the options to customers to have that flexibility. So what is really the most important part of AWS Transform? It can help you to compress those timelines. So the migration projects that maybe some companies, they're thinking about like 5 years, 7 years, with AWS Transform, you can bring it down. But let's walk through one scenario as far as Windows. This is the actual typical customer that may have Microsoft stack. You have probably Microsoft.NET, SQL Server, and also Windows running on a virtual machine. With AWS Transform, we can help you, number 1, to migrate from Microsoft.NET to .NET Core Open Source, which is something that is a new capability available this week. The second part, which is also, that's one of the most exciting parts, is migrating from SQL Server to what we call Amazon Aurora Postgres SQL. So how many of you trying to do like a large data migration, and you're really worried about how can you take care of this? So we have you covered to AWS Transform. But let's go deeper on the data. If you can raise your hand, how many of you have done like a data migration in the room? So probably like 50% of the room. And probably if you know, data migration is the hardest part of any transformation. You call it in the cloud, outside of the cloud. So what we have done with SQL Server to Aurora Postgres is really simplified and makes the life easier for any company. There are 4 steps. Number 1, we can help you with the analysis. So if you have, think about you have maybe massive number of databases you want to analyze. You want to understand what are the dependencies. Who is using those applications is part of the discovery analysis that we have available. Second one, we can help you also to analyze this schemas. As well also, we can help you to move the data itself, which is the hardest part. Moving the data from a massive number of systems that you have all the way up to Aurora. And the third part, which is also super important, is stored procedures. Many of the customers that we're working on, they have massive logic running stored procedures. So how do you ensure that those logic is now available in the new system? And the last but not least is the validation and the deployment. In my experience, sometimes the only thing is we want to focus on the deployment, and we forget about, how do we making sure that the data is, has the right integrity, security, so we can help you with all of this end-to-end. But also, it's not just the Windows part of the SQL Server mainframe. This is probably, over the last 6 months, we have seen a major high demand in terms of mainframe organizations. Customers, and the reason why, because customers are looking for a systematic approach. They don't want just a piece of meal. So what we offer is, we can help you with the code analysis. The second part, which is one of my favorite capabilities, we can do reverse engineer. Look at the code, and also based on that, create automated documentation for you. Think about some of the rules that maybe were written 10 years ago or 20 years ago. We have you covered. And number 3 is the code decomposition, which is, we're going to see an example in a second, is think about you have a large monolithic application. How can you break it down in business domains or even microservices? And the migration planning, which is many customers reaching out to us, Oscar, Brad, what is the best way to migrate? How many waves do we want to have as part of the planning? And then the last part, which is also important, is make a decision. Should I refactor, meaning I'm going to take the legacy logic and redesign my application, or reimagine? Reimagine is a new concept that is happening right now. It's a major factor is where really companies, they have the option to really redesign the model, redesign the logic moving forward. And the last part is test and deploy. So we have multiple case studies. This is a real case study from Toyota Motors. So when they reach out to us, what was the challenge? The challenge is they were running like a large mainframe system. They didn't have enough mainframe skills. Some of the people that wrote the application, they're no longer with the company. But also the massive number of lines of code were very impressive, more than 40 million lines of code. All of this, so they look at different options, and they came up with the conclusion that AWS Transform was the only option that can do the code analysis, help them really to understand the complexity, also help them to really do the decomposition. So what was the main result? They were able to really compress the timelines. Looking at the numbers, the data is, we're looking more than like a 50% of the times faster from a traditional approach. The second part, which is a major benefit, is they were able to identify what was the logic, what is the technical depth, what are the things that we need to modernize, and what are the things that we need to throw away. You look at the quote from the Brian Corser, who is the CTO, so he literally said, AWS Transform has done what many said was impossible. They look at different options, something that I highly recommend for you. Give it a shot. If you're going through a transformation, you will be very surprised with the results. But digital transformation is not just migrations, modernizations. Something that also we see from customers. Customers are looking for, how can I improve productivity? So to that end, we recently released Amazon Quick Suite, or also you can call Amazon Quick, as you heard this morning from Matt Garman. Something that is coming as a major features that we have available. Number one is the ability to bring data in one single place and make decisions in real time. Probably some of you heard about the Customer 360 concept, CRMs, bringing all data in one place. So what is the difference? The difference is you can bring data that maybe is running on Excel, it's on Salesforce.com, data maybe is available in other agents. Once you bring this data through Quick Suite, now you can start asking questions and get responses in a matter of seconds versus hours. The second part is something that I use personally. With Quick Suite, you also think about like your coach and mentor. So how many times you're trying to make a decision and you want to see what are the options, what are the pros and cons. So Quick Suite can be also your mentor. That's something that I use on a day-to-day basis to help me to make decisions. And the last part is, it's not just to get insights, but also to trigger some actions. How many times you've been in a situation where you're making a decision, and you have to trigger a workflow. Maybe the workflow needs to fix a problem, maybe needs to send an email to someone. So right now, there's no wait unless you can start doing some custom automations. So to that end, our third scenario I want to cover is the automations, the business workflows. But I want to show you, this is a real example we're building for a customer. Think about this customer, they have it's a large bank, and they're looking for, so how can they automate the document validation? And as part of this loan process. So we're going to see here first, what is the data we need? We need the driver license. So we're going to drop the data, drag and drop the data. We're going to also, the same for a form application. So this is a process right now, is for purposes demo, is where just drag and drop. As soon as we click start, the system is going to kick off a massive agentic workflow. There is going to be, number one, as you see, it's going to start parsing the data. It's going to identify what data is missing. It's going to identify and apply some of the rules. So there are multiple agents that are happening, and those agents are happening in parallel. Once the data is ready, so one of the last steps that will happen is the actual validation per se. So the validation is not just a simple validations comparing data. The system behind this is going to apply some business rules, but also it's going to identify, is there any potential fraud? Is this driver license is really real, or this is a fake license? So that's all of this will happen, and we're going to see just in a few seconds. The validation is done, and the system is telling us, here is the discrepancies, here is the matches, but also something that I was surprised when I saw this one working is, right now we're talking about only one person. The same process can be applicable for hundreds, thousands, or millions of records of personas running in parallel. The second part, the system has the intelligence to keep learning. So it's not just a typical workflow. As the data continues, you will continue learning as we go. And the last part, which is also is super important, is what is the human? There's a human in the loop. At this point, the person probably, what are the options? The option will say, I need to request further information. Or I may decide to go and approve the application, regardless the human also continue in the loop. And that's where you guys can, your people can bring the highest value. We covered different use cases, but one of the areas that is really moving super fast is how companies are transforming their environments using agentic AI for software development lifecycle. And Kiro is, how many of you, before we start, how many of you have used Kiro so far? 30%. So my suggestion is, I would love by the end of this week for everyone in this room to use Kiro and give us your feedback. As of today, and probably the number have changed after the keynote, we have almost 300,000 subscribers in only a few months. 300,000 subscribers. So, but what is Kiro? Kiro, probably you may say, Oscar, there are many tools in the market. Absolutely. Probably there are like hundreds of thousands of tools available. So Kiro is the first agentic AI IDE that is fully connected with AWS. So that's number one. Number two, when you look at the software development lifecycle, so you have to go through probably like requirements, you go through a design, you have to go through implementation. So Kiro is fully embedded as part of this. Let me just give an example. In one of the customers, they were trying to build an application, but they didn't have the requirements, they didn't have the design. So what we did is just get in a room, gather the requirements, and after the session in less than a few hours, we were able to create a requirements document and a technical design for the customer using Kiro. And the story didn't end there. So the customer, the one that said, well, anyone can create a document. Can you show me the app? One day after, we showed the prototype to a customer. So again, Kiro is the second capability that provides fully embedded, and you guys will see more coming up. But what are the main three areas where Kiro can help you? Number one, build a new application. It could be a prototype, but you can take that prototype all the way to production. But most important is, you may say, well, I'm not a technical person. So Keto has the ability also to connect with you using NLP, natural language. I have seen many people that are not technical also ramping up with Keto and building applications. The second one is if you have an application, you may say, well, I already spent 6 months, 1 year building an app. But I don't know if the app is ready. What is the technical debt? So you can bring also Keto to really refine, redesign your applications. One of the other customers that I'm working on is they shared the code with us. It was really hard for us to understand the logic. So what we use Keto is to create the auto documentation and also simplified the weight, the number of functions during the code, right? But the last part, which is something that very soon I'm going to hand it over to Ashish, is combining AWS Transform and Keto. As I described, AWS Transform is you have a massive VMware mainframe application as an example. So it can help you really to automate a lot of things. But there are things that also you may need to have the human in the loop. But also you need someone that can help you to finalize. So combining AWS Transform and Keto, it will be the best way to go. But let's walk through them. We have hundreds of demos. This is a demo that we built for another bank. In this case, what I'm asking Keto is, I want to create a banking app, and I want the application to be in Spanish, and I want the look and feel. I'm just going to give a link. This is the title sheet. So let's walk through this together. So at this point, I'm just saying, Keto, can you create a banking app with some validations? Right? That's all that I'm telling you. Right? So Keto is kicking off multiple agents. Those agents is going to be looking at what is the rules, what do I need to have. It's going to look at the application that I refer. And then in a few seconds, you're going to see the app, the prototype up and running in Keto. Right? Obviously, this is just a prototype. We have also implemented something very similar for a customer in just 3 weeks. And the customer, the original plan was to get the application in 3 months. So we went from 3 months to 3 weeks using Keto. Again, there's a highly potential, and this is just the beginning. Probably also, as you saw in the keynote today, there are other capabilities that are available right now. They're coming up with Keto as far as DevOps, security, and so on. So you can bring those as well. But before I hand it over to Ashish, I want to just close with something very important. Is AWS, we have an end-to-end portfolio for agentic AI. So today, we talk about Keto, Quick Suite, or Quit, AWS Transform. So there are some of the options for you. But also, we have different customers. They're coming to me and say, Oscar, we want to build our own. We don't want to use Keto. We want to use Agent Core. We want to use some of the open source using SDKs. Absolutely. That's the second tier that we have available. But also, we have customers, they want to build their own models. So in that level, also from an infrastructure point of view, we have you covered through SageMaker and some of the major announcements that coming on this week. So my guidance to you, as you start planning the session this week, look at this map and see where you want to focus. But also, once you're back to your company, also try to take this map and see where you are, what is the readiness, and what are the tools that you want to use moving forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it over now to Ashish Shekhar, Senior Vice President for Danske Bank. He is he's managing all the technology platforms across the bank. And he's going to show us how Danske Bank has been disrupting the industry and how Danske Bank is innovating using GenAI and agentic AI. And with that, Ashish, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Oscar. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today with all of you. So Oscar and Brad talked quite a bit about the technologies that are available and here and now. But we're in the privileged position that we've been co-innovating on some of these technologies for some time together with AWS. So we can share a little bit about what does this actually look like in action. When you put all of this together, what does that look like? A little bit about us. So I'm here representing Danske Bank. We're a 150-year-old institution, lots of amazing legacy behind us. But that comes with its own challenges. We've also been building things for close to that time. We have a large presence. So we have over 3 million customers, 21,000 staff. So you can imagine that the challenges that we work with are going to be very similar to many of your organizations. We're not terribly big, but we're also not terribly small. We're highly regulated. So our starting point in this journey was not dramatically different to what many of you will experience in your organizations. What does that look like? Roughly about 18,000 VMs in terms of infrastructure, about 80,000 containers, 25 petabytes of data. And that is kind of where we started about a year and a half-ish ago. So why should you listen to it, and why is our story worth telling? Well, a little bit of what we've been able to achieve. Now, we're not perfect, but whatever we're doing seems to be working. So there's a few things we could potentially take away from here. We've been orchestrating a cloud migration for some time, trying to get our estate over into AWS so that we can leverage all of the capability that becomes available on AWS. We've been able to do it 6 times faster than the next fastest in this scale. We're one of the leaders in agentic AI usage across the bank. We've been climbing the ranks quite steadily, and we've climbed a number of places in the use of agentic AI across some global indexes. So that seems to be working as well. We're now moving from experimentation. So we started our journey with agentic AI a few years ago, like many people would have with the advent of the original GPTs. But now we're going from what used to be experiments of 200 to 300 different experiments going on across the organization to concentrating our effort and making some very large investments into very strategic places. Why is that? Because we now believe that there is no more proof required for this technology to be adopted. We believe that the technology is there, it's driving lots of values, so we have to take bigger steps, more meaningful steps, put some meaningful operation behind some critical elements. We're doing that now. Finally, recently, we've run a few GenAI hackathons, but with the technological pace that we've been able to achieve and where we are now in our journey, we were able to run a hackathon which was participated by about 50 to 60 teams across the organization, and we built over 600 agents in the space of 2 days. A bunch of those we actually promised that we will take to production, and some of them are now running in production over the last few hackathons. So how do you get to this, and how do you get there? As I mentioned, we started with a very complex technology estate that we were running. But we've been able to do some really, really cool things. Over the last 15 months, we have moved 850 of our applications out of just over 1,000 into the cloud. Now, that is a staggering pace. And when we say we move something, we mean it really is moved. All non-production environments, all production environments, all firewall rules, all CMD record updates, all the DNS repointing, all of the on-prem assets cleaned up is what our definition of done is. So when we move, there's nothing more to do. At pace, that was about April, May timeframe, in one single month, we ended up moving 150 applications from zero all the way through to full production in cloud. And typically, this is done with hundreds of people formed in like 10, 20, 30 squads, is the way these migrations work. We were able to do it with 2 squads in operation. And we've talked a lot about this. We were able to do this only because we have automated nearly 100% of the migration. We've automated everything from notifications going out to our application owners, to change records being created, to DNS rules getting updated, to DNS TTLs being lowered, to replication starting, automated, working out when things should start, taking a full snapshot of VMs before we move them, all of it. It's reduced our manual effort by a dramatic amount and helped us move at pace. It's very doable, and the time is now to be able to do it. Now, without going into too much detail, we're not stopping there. We're progressing even further. We're now applying lots of agentic AI to accelerate this even further. I can only wish that the capabilities that are available to us now were available to us about 12 months ago. One small example of this. We recently, and when I say recent, probably about 2-3 months ago, put a new agent into production assisting our migrations. So what happens is, as I mentioned, at scale, we're moving hundreds of applications in a month and only 2 squads. You can imagine that those 2 squads are not moving the applications. They're only responsible for handling the ones that fail. There'll always be some failures. So it's only by exception that humans and the squads actually get involved. Now, the reason they get involved is when something fails, it's obviously out of the norm. And these things can obviously then be very complex. When we've ended up automating 2,000 to 4,000 steps in the migration process, when something fails, it's a complex problem. It's not usually a straightforward thing that we could have picked up, because otherwise we would have automated it anyway. We built an agent. So what happens now is when something does fail, rather than the case getting handed over to a human team, it actually gets handed over to an agent. And the agent first does all the deciphering, all of the working out of what the problem may have been, does a whole bunch of troubleshooting itself, and then comes up with the most plausible solution for how to remediate the problem. What we're seeing is what was already low error rates is cut down by half. Our triage times of getting to a problem cut down by about 70-80%. It's absolutely incredible what this can do. And this is the base of where we are. This can only get better from here. There was a very, very interesting specific incident that happened that I can talk a little bit about. So there was 2 applications that failed. We had 2 migration teams that were looking at one application independently, and they were trying to rack their brains to go, what is going on here? When they started looking at the output of the agent, sort of realized that the agent's kind of talking about something that they didn't know, which is, hey, you know what, between these 2 applications that have failed, I can see that there is, looking through the entire stack, that there is actually a common disk component, which for some reason was not something that was picked up before in the process. The agent recommended, squad 1, stop your work. Squad 2, continue and fix the problem. The other one will just be fixed automatically. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. Now, this could have happened. Definitely what would have otherwise happened is we would have rolled back both the applications, done the analysis over a couple of days, figured out that this is the problem, then sorted it out, come back. This prevented that whole process from happening. And this is now operating very much in production and being used every day with our teams. We're expanding this to all incidents being covered in the bank. Anytime there's an incident that happens, we'll get transferred over to an agent with all of the information that we've captured, being able to do meaningful analysis, come back with results, and being able to cut all of the time that we're spending analyzing things and recovering things by a large amount. We also need to do, obviously, a tremendous amount of modernization. So it's great that we've been able to do the move, but what about the modernization? We'll talk about that in a second. And also underpin everything we do with GenAI. Just the sheer magnitude of what we can do with these things is incredible. All of the things that I just talked about are available in a technical blog. There's multiple things we've done. I'm going to stop here for a second. If you want to pull your phone out, get the QR code. You will be able to reference these things. They're published in blogs on AWS already. And the amazing part about all of this is systems that we built and existed about 12 months ago. But now this has been made even more powerful with the AWS Transform pieces that Oscar was talking about. So I can only wish if that was available to us then, it would be amazing. But to you, it is now. So you should be able to do this even faster than we've been able to do. And I can't wait to see where this goes. But here's the thing. Now, we've talked a lot about the distributed estate. But most organizations like ours, there is this big behemoth mainframe, right? And it's a lot more prevalent in large organizations than we care to admit. So what about that? It's amazing that we can move all of these applications, but core data of the bank, some of the core applications of the bank sit in this thing that has been serving us really well for a good 30, 40 years. But now, is it really where we should be running everything that we have running now? We've increased latency on things that are running on AWS, different technology sets, so we're having to maintain not only a core set of skill sets on the mainframe, but also on the cloud. So there is that thing. And there is, of course, yes, being able to move things fast is really good, but what about modernization? Or even from the mainframe, if we start to move things, I mean, the problem has been solved before, but what does that actually look like now, and what does that mean? So it's important to see why is it that we want to optimize our mainframe estate. Why don't we just keep running everything the way it is? Well, it will not be a surprise to anyone. There's a massive shrinking pool of skill sets and capability in this space. Now we have amazing amounts of Java developers, .NET developers in the bank, Go developers, you name it. But mainframe development is a shrinking pool set and shrinking skill set, very hard to work with. Growing knowledge gaps. We're having to maintain multiple skill sets across the bank. Legacy system constraints, everything that comes around. We have business logic buried in PL1 and COBOL code with people who are sort of leaving the bank. Now, things have been running amazingly. One of the best things about the mainframe is backwards compatibility, but that is also the thing that holds us back. We have a number of components, pieces of software running on our mainframe that are good 30, 40 years old, right? Runs amazingly, but nobody understands it. That's a hard problem to solve and getting worse by the day. Lots of data in the mainframe setup, further away from all of our distributed application estate. Not a place we want to be. Innovation lag. We're building all of these generative AI applications everywhere. We're leveraging AWS technology to do all of that, but not on the mainframe. Different legacy tool set, legacy code. There's things that we could do, but all of that requires modernization, requires also to be able to move. So the imperative to do something about it is very much there. So we started with a few core principles in mind some time ago, right? Number one, the problem has been solved. People have been moving applications out of the mainframe to elsewhere. So what's new about this, right? The core issue with the way this was done previously for a very long period of time is a rules-based setup, so very, very hardly defined targets. But the amount of quote-unquote human in the loop required at the end of a rules-based conversion is actually very high. This is a high-effort problem. And that translates to the 10 to 15 years that Brad was talking about and Oscar was talking about. It's simply not time we have. 15 years later, the world would be a completely different place. We would have gone through 3 corporate cycles. Being able to stick through that is an incredibly hard problem, and also one that is very hard to invest into. If you only see results like 10, 15 years later, big problem, right? So we wanted to do it differently. We wanted to do it not the way it has been done before. Now, innovation with agentic AI is obvious. It is so much. I think a lot of what Oscar talked about is capability available to us today, so it made sense for us to use that. How do we use that to do that different? Third, this is, obviously, we're trying to do something that has not been done in the way we're trying to do it before. So proving value early was extremely important. We can't be in a situation where in our organizations, we're trying to build something for 12 months and only then you can see a piece of value come out. Too hard. Finally, it had to be a solution that scales well across the entire organization. It's not enough to be able to hand crank a pilot out or a POC out and then hope that it'll scale. So we took 2 of relatively complex applications. Now, obviously, these are not core banks, but these are also not POCs. These are not small. These are applications, a fee application and direct debit application, underpinning some core parts of our business, right? It was not enough for us to take something relatively small and convert it because that would not mean anything. One of these applications, one of these applications is supporting our mortgage lending operations in the Nordics, and the other one is supporting a direct debit system, right? Some things are pretty common about these things. Both of these applications have been written 20 to 30 years ago. They've been evolved a little bit, but very little. One written in COBOL, one written in PL1. The other common thing about this is very, very limited skill set and SME knowledge available in the bank to be able to work with it, right? But some things were quite different. Now, traditional approaches on converting these applications and moving them over rely on a fixed target. Most converters go into Java, or rather sort of JOBOL. It's not even really Java, right? And that is not a space that we want to be. We don't want to move from COBOL to JOBOL. We also don't want to move into The area that owns the Phi application operates mostly in a .NET skill set. Now, we don't want to introduce an application that is full-blown Java, which means we've got to operate with another skill set in the same team, right? So we wanted a target from COBOL to .NET. The other one, on the other hand, they already operate in Java. So it's a PL1 to Java, right? So it's a very targeted. It's not enough to be able to convert to a static target because it has to match the organizational setup that we have. Otherwise, we just simply increase cost and capture ourselves into another legacy. So that is what we set out to do. Now, how do you do it? There's a few different approaches that can be taken. There's obviously reforged setups, there's re-platform setups, but the hardest of them all is when you go from a complete legacy into a full modern space. Now, we said if we're going to try and do this, the proof, it has to be for the hardest ecosystem, and that is what we went for. We went for going from COBOL PL1, these two applications, using, well, building together and then using the Amazon Transform ecosystem to extract business rules with high accuracy and very, very low human overhead. Now, we wanted to use a little bit of a human in the loop just to confirm things, but this process had to be low overhead, because otherwise we can't block our entire organization from doing what they're doing now. But once we've done that, and that actually works extremely well, to our surprise, with the technology available to us now, the accuracy rates are really, really high. Second, we take that and we pump it through all of the work that is going on in the Kira space. We do spec-driven development and build a brand new application that is going straight into a fully modernized space. One into a Java target, one into a .NET target. Now, this is a great concept, but the great thing is we now have been able to prove, and we put both of these applications into production 2 weeks ago. So it is now a very proven method that can be used to move forward. What are the advantages of doing it this way? We lower the effort on our SMEs. We improve their productivity. Now, remember that this is a very, very low available skill set, SMEs. We don't want to be spending tons of their time just trying to revalidate everything that happens because they've got to run a business as well. Increase developer efficiency by a very, very large proportion. Preserving logic, but with high accuracy. That is what takes time. Like, not getting the logic right and having to redo it is what elongates the time and increases effort, which translates into hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on this problem. But finally, highly regulated, so we need to make sure that we meet the regulation. You can pump all of these things as steers into the build of the application via Kira, and just works extremely well. And it will only get better from here. So what does all of that get us? 65% lower error rates compared to traditional approaches, not even compared to human directly, compared to traditional machine approaches, 65% lower. Imagine the amount of money that translates into. Mainframe applications are notorious for being monoliths and heavily interconnected. We lower the interdependency through this approach when we rebuild them by 75%, hopefully increasing this even further. Reverse engineering, that is what takes all the time, the energy, the money, the effort, lower by 80%, translating into further SME input being lowered, right? Human effort being significantly lowered. Forward engineering, building out the application from the business rules, 4 times faster, 4 times faster. That translates literally from 10 to 15 years cutting down to potentially 4 to 5, 5 to 7, depending on your estate. We obviously run a very large estate. But the mass effects of these things are transformative. Overall, 60% migration speed being faster. And we're just getting started. This will probably get significantly better from where it is now. A key few points, lessons learned, very, very important in this transformation journey for us. Educate, 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 number one. Without education of the entire skill set, without education of people, the adoption would be really low. Demystify, make this real for people. Put this in the hands of people, get them to try it. Do the hackathons, get them to build things. Put the tools in front of people and let them see for themselves. The evidence gathered directly is the most beneficial for all humans. And I can't stress that enough. Give them paths to production. When you run hackathon, being able to give people path to production changes the game completely. People get a lot more excited being able to actually want to do that. Super important. Prove value early. When you try and do things that have not been done before, it can also seem like something that is really far away. Avoid that. Prove it early. Go for some of the approaches in being able to pilot, being able to put things into production, but don't stop too early. Not POC is not enough. Pilots are not enough. Actually going through production, proving value, super important. Finally, if you're going to try and do things that have not been done before, take some risks. Some risks are okay to take, and they change the game. They really, really, really help change the shape of how technological evolution is helping power our own future and helping us maintain our lead in digital. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, Oscar. So just to summarize what we talked about today, I opened with some of the statistics of what some of the ambitions are, what some of the expectations are, and what some of the trends are. Oscar spoke about some real-world services and products and solutions and capabilities and the framework that we use to help our customers accelerate their mission to the cloud. And then you saw Ashish with some real-world practical examples of how this is done. I remember I flew to meet Ashish a couple of years ago when this thing was just getting started, and it is truly impressive to see how far we've come in such a short amount of time. And it's hard, but it's not impossible. And getting started is probably the first step to take, and that means training your people, getting fluent with AI. And what I really like about this entire story is it's a journey to the cloud, and it's leveraging AI, and it's introducing AI into your organization in a safe and sensible way. Not about staffing up people and finding the right experts. It's using capabilities that are available to you today. So these stats are real. I think we demonstrated some of that today. Ashish is proving some of that today, and we certainly are just getting started with many of you. So look, we have a lot of migration topics occurring throughout the week. We encourage you to build a really good map for things that are important to you. And if you have any questions, we encourage you to connect with all of us. Take a quick snapshot of this one, and the next slide is thanking you for our time and how to get a hold of us. These are QR codes that will take you to our LinkedIn profiles, and then we can just get started with a conversation, any questions or any follow-ups you have. We'll be taking questions outside of the room today. It's a pretty quick turn here because there's another session coming in. So we sincerely thank you for your time, thanking the speakers, and have a great week here at Las Vegas and reInvent. Thank you so much.